Vextai pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship and watched the blue planet grow larger. Earth looked peaceful from space. White clouds swirled over green and brown land masses. Oceans sparkled in the light of the system's yellow star. It was hard to believe that the most heavily armed species in the galaxy lived on such a beautiful world. The Altrurian scientist shifted in his seat and checked his research notes again. For the past 50 years, the Galactic Federation had been puzzled by human behavior. Every other species maintained small defense forces. They built cities focused on art, science, and trade. But humans were different. Their cities had walls and shields. Their cargo ships carried weapons. Even their research stations looked like military bases. Why do they need so many guns? Vextai had asked the Federation Council before leaving, his home world. What are they afraid of? The Council had no answers. That was why they sent him to find out. The transport ship docked with the Terran research station that orbited Earth. Vextai gathered his equipment and stepped into the airlock. The station's artificial gravity felt strange under his feet. Everything here was built thick and strong. The walls were too thick. The doors were too heavy. Even the lights seemed brighter than they needed to be. A human woman waited for him in the docking bay. She was tall with short black hair and wore a dark blue uniform. Metal badges covered her chest. Her hand rested on a weapon at her hip. "Welcome to Earth orbit, Dr. Vextai," she said in perfect galactic common. "I am Captain Lee Da-Hai. I will be your guide during your stay." Vextai bowed in the Altrurian way. "Thank you, Captain. I look forward to learning about human culture." "Captain," Lee led him through the station's corridors. Vextai tried not to stare, but everything seemed designed for war. Blast doors every 50 meters, security cameras in every corner, armed guards at key intersections. This was supposed to be a research station, but it felt like a fortress. "Is there a threat to this station?" Vextai asked as they walked. Captain Lee glanced at him. "We believe in being prepared, Dr. Vextai. Better to have protection and not need it than to need it and not have it." They reached Vextai's quarters. The room was comfortable but simple. A bed, a desk, a small bathroom. But even here he noticed the thick walls and the heavy door that locked from both sides. "Dr. Kang Woo-jin will meet with you tomorrow, Captain," Lee said. "He is our chief historian and will help with your research. Is there anything you need?" "Just one question," Vextai said. "Why are the walls so thick here?" Captain Lee paused at the door. For a moment something flickered across her face. Fear? Sadness? Then she smiled. "Space can be dangerous, Doctor. We build our homes to last." After she left, Vextai unpacked his equipment and began his first report to the Altrurian Science Council. Day 1. Initial observations confirm human militarization extends to all aspects of their society. Even civilian research facilities show military-grade construction and security. Local explanation cites space hazards, but this seems insufficient to explain the level of fortification observed. The next morning, Vextai met Dr. Kang Woo-jin in the station's main laboratory. The human was older than Captain Lee, with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore simple clothes, but Vextai noticed the small weapon hidden under his jacket. "Welcome to our little outpost," Dr. Kang said with a warm smile. "I understand you want to learn about human military history." "Yes," Vextai said. "My people are curious about why humans maintain such large armed forces. Most species in the galaxy keep only small defense units." Dr. Kang nodded slowly. "We have had different experiences than most species. Our history has taught us to be careful." He led Vextai to a computer terminal and called up files about human wars. There were many conflicts listed. Wars between human nations before they reached space. Border conflicts with alien pirates, disputes over mining rights. "These seem like normal conflicts," Vextai said as he read. "Why would they require such heavy militarization?" But you are only seeing part of the story," Dr. Kang said. "Human history is complex. Some events are classified for security reasons." Vextai looked up from the screen. "Classified? But these are historical records. Some history is too sensitive to share openly, Dr. Kang explained. Even among allies, there are things better left unsaid. As they worked through the morning, Vextai noticed gaps in the human historical records. Entire decades seemed to be missing or heavily edited. References to wars that had no explanations. Mentions of enemies that were never named. Dr. Kang, Vextai said during lunch, there seem to be missing periods in your history. What happened during the years 2387 to 2394? Dr. Kang's face grew serious. Those were difficult times. We prefer not to discuss them. But surely for scientific research, some wounds are better left alone, Dr. Vextai. Dr. Kang stood up from the table. Let us focus on the information we can share. That afternoon, Captain Lee took Vextai on a tour of the station. She showed him the research labs where scientists studied everything from alien plant life to new forms of energy. But Vextai's trained eye noticed other things. Hidden weapon mounts behind sliding panels. Blast shields that could seal off entire sections. Emergency supplies that looked like they could last for months. This was not just a research station. It was a fortress that happened to do research. Captain Lee, Vextai said as they stood in the observation deck looking down at Earth. May I ask you a personal question? Of course. You carry weapons even here, in this peaceful place. Do you ever feel safe? Captain Lee was quiet for a long moment. She stared down at the blue and white planet below them. Safety is something we create, Dr. Vextai, she finally said. It does not exist naturally in the universe. We learned long ago that the price of peace is constant vigilance. But vigilance against what? Your species has been part of the Federation for over a century. Who threatens you? Again, that flicker of something in her eyes. Threats come from many directions, Doctor. Some we can see. Others, she shrugged. Others we must simply be ready for. That evening, Vextai tried to access more detailed records from his quarters. The computer system was advanced, but many files required security clearances he did not have. What he could access seemed strangely empty. Human history before space travel was well documented. Their early expansion into nearby star systems was recorded in detail, but the recent centuries had holes like missing teeth. He sent another report to his home world. Day 2. Human historical records show significant gaps in classifications. Local researchers claim security concerns but will not elaborate. The level of military preparation suggests threats beyond what is publicly acknowledged. Recommend extending research timeline to investigate further. The reply came quickly. Continue investigation. Federation Council interested in your findings. Exercise caution in questioning sensitive areas. Over the next few days, Vextai tried different approaches. He spoke with other scientists on the station. All were friendly and helpful, but none would discuss certain periods of human history. They all seemed to know something they would not share. He observed the daily routines of the station. Weapons drills were conducted every morning. Security sweeps happened 3 times per day. The staff moved with military precision even when doing civilian work. It is like they are waiting for something, he wrote in his notes. But waiting for what? On his 5th day, Vextai was working in the lab when alarms began sounding. Red lights flashed throughout the station. Over the intercom, Captain Lee's voice announced, "All personnel to emergency stations, this is not a drill." Vextai watched as every human in the lab immediately stopped what they were doing and moved to assigned positions. Hidden weapon lockers opened in the walls. Security barriers descended from the ceiling. In less than 2 minutes, the research laboratory had transformed into a military command center. Dr. Kang appeared at Vextai's side. "Please remain calm, Doctor. This is just a routine exercise." But Vextai could see the tension in the human's face, the sweat on his forehead, the way his hand gripped the weapon that had appeared from nowhere. "What kind of exercise requires such preparations?" Vextai asked. "The kind that keeps us alive," Dr. Kang replied quietly. The alert lasted for 30 minutes. Then the all clear sounded and everything returned to normal. The weapons disappeared back into hidden compartments. The barriers retracted into the ceiling. Within minutes, it was a research lab again. But Vextai had seen the truth underneath. These humans were not playing at being soldiers. They were soldiers who happened to be doing science. That night, he sat in his quarters and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there were his own people, living on peaceful worlds with minimal defenses. They trusted in the Federation's protection and the goodwill of their neighbors. But humans trusted no one. They built every structure like a fortress. They trained every civilian like a soldier. They prepared for wars that might never come. The question was, why? What did humans know that the rest of the galaxy did not? Vextai opened his computer and began typing his longest report yet. The reply from the Altrurian Science Council arrived 3 days later. It was brief but clear. Continue investigation. Higher priority assigned. Federation Council now monitoring your reports directly. Vextai felt a chill run through his scaled skin. When the Federation Council took direct interest in a research project, it meant they suspected something important was being hidden. Dr. Kang Woo-jin seemed nervous when they met that morning. The human historian kept glancing at his communications device and checking the time. Is everything well, Dr. Kang? Vextai asked as they sat down to review more historical files. Of course, Dr. Kang said quickly. Just busy with other projects. Now you wanted to know about human expansion into the outer colonies? But as they worked, Vextai noticed that Dr. Kang was being even more careful about what files he opened. Entire databases remained locked behind security protocols. When Vextai asked about specific time periods, Dr. Kang would redirect the conversation to safer topics. The mining colonies established in 2401 were very successful, Dr. Kang said, pulling up charts showing mineral extraction rates. But what about the years before that? Vextai pressed. 2395 to 2400 show no colony establishment at all. Why the gap? Dr. Kang's fingers paused over the keyboard. Those were quiet years. Not much expansion happening. Vextai pulled out his own notes. But according to Federation shipping records, human military vessels were very active during that period. Dozens of ships moving to the outer rim. That does not sound quiet. Military exercises, Dr. Kang said without meeting Vextai's eyes. Training missions, nothing of historical importance. It was a lie. Vextai was sure of it. But why would a historian lie about his own people's history? That afternoon, Captain Lee took him on another tour of the station. This time she showed him areas he had not seen before, the engineering sections, the power generation facilities, the docking bays for military vessels. This is impressive, Vextai said as they walked through a hangar filled with sleek fighter craft. But why does a research station need so many warships? Protection, Captain Lee replied. Space is dangerous. But these are not defensive ships, Vextai observed. These are attack fighters, built for speed and firepower, not defense. Captain Lee stopped walking. She turned to look at him with those dark eyes that seemed to hold secrets. Dr. Vextai, may I speak plainly? Please do. Your people sent you here to learn about human militarization, but perhaps you should ask yourself why your own Federation Council is so interested in our weapons. The question caught Vextai off guard. I assume they want to understand. They want to make sure we are not a threat. Captain Lee interrupted. Every species that joins the Federation goes through this evaluation. We passed it over a century ago. So why the renewed interest now? Vextai had no answer for that. Captain Lee continued the tour, but now Vextai noticed things he had missed before. The weapon systems were more advanced than anything he had seen in Federation military installations. The shield's generators were more powerful. The sensor arrays reached much further into space. This was not just a research station with defensive capabilities. This was a military base that happened to conduct research. Captain, Vextai said as they stood before a massive blast door marked with warning symbols. What is behind that door? Emergency supplies, she said quickly. Food, water, medical equipment. But the door was too big for storage, and the warning symbols were not for hazardous materials. They were warnings about weapons. That evening, Vextai tried a different approach. He accessed the station's public networks and began searching for information about human culture and society. What he found was disturbing. Human entertainment was filled with stories about war and survival. Their literature featured heroes who fought against impossible odds. Their music spoke of standing guard against the darkness. Even their children's stories were about brave defenders protecting innocent people from terrible monsters. Every aspect of human culture seemed focused on the idea that danger could strike at any moment, that safety was temporary, that someone always needed to be ready to fight. But fight against what? He found references to something called the Long Watch in several cultural works. Humans spoke of it with reverence like a sacred duty, but nowhere could he find an explanation of what they were watching for. The next morning brought a surprise visitor. Ambassador Quindar from the Centauri Federation arrived on an official diplomatic vessel. The Centauri were one of the founding members of the Federation, old and wise and respected throughout the galaxy. Captain Lee introduced Vextai to the ambassador in the station's formal reception area. Quindar was tall and thin with silver skin and large black eyes. His species had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Dr. Vextai, the ambassador said in a voice like wind through crystal. I understand you are studying human military practices. Yes, Ambassador. It is a scientific inquiry into their cultural differences. Ambassador Quindar exchanged a look with Captain Lee. Perhaps you would join me for a private conversation, Doctor. There are things you should know about your hosts. They met in Vextai's quarters an hour later. Ambassador Quindar settled into a chair and fixed Vextai with those large black eyes. Doctor, how much do you know about human history before they joined the Federation? I am learning that there are significant gaps in the available records, Vextai admitted. Yes, there are good reasons for those gaps. The ambassador leaned forward. Humans are not like other species, Dr. Vextai. They have experienced things that most civilized beings cannot imagine. What kind of things? Conflicts that went beyond normal warfare. Encounters that challenged their understanding of reality itself. They survived experiences that would have destroyed most species. Vextai felt his heart beating faster. What are you suggesting, Ambassador? I am suggesting that humans learned to be heavily armed because they had to be, because they faced threats that required extreme responses. The ambassador's voice dropped to a whisper, and I am suggesting that some of those threats may still exist. But surely the Federation would know about any major threats. Would we? Ambassador Quindar interrupted. The galaxy is vast, Doctor. There are regions we have never explored, phenomena we do not understand, and humans have always been the ones pushing furthest into the unknown. After the ambassador left, Vextai sat in his room trying to process what he had heard. If humans had faced some unknown threat in the past, that would explain their militarization. But why hide it? Why not warn the rest of the galaxy? He decided to be more direct in his questioning. The next day, he found Dr. Kang in the historical archives and confronted him with his observations. Dr. Kang, I believe you are not telling me the complete truth about human history. The human historian looked up from his work. For a moment, Vextai saw fear in his eyes. What do you mean, Dr. Vextai? The gaps in your records. The military? Preparations. The way everyone on this station moves like soldiers. Ambassador Quindar suggested that humans have faced threats beyond normal experience. Dr. Kang was quiet for a long time. Then he closed the files he had been working on and turned to face Vextai fully. Doctor, let me ask you something. On your homeworld, do your people sleep peacefully at night? Of course. Why would we not? Because some of us learned long ago that the universe is not as safe as it appears. That there are things in the darkness between stars that most species are lucky never to encounter. What kind of things? Dr. Kang stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. Things that your Federation Council has worked very hard to help everyone forget. Things that are better left forgotten if you want to sleep peacefully. But if there are threats out there, should we not all know about them? Should we not all be prepared? Should you? Dr. Kang turned back to him. Would your people be happier knowing that their peaceful existence depends on others standing guard? Would they sleep better knowing what watches them from the dark? Vextai had no answer for that. Dr. Vextai, humans are heavily armed because someone has to be. We maintain our weapons because someone needs to be ready. We train our people like soldiers because when the time comes they may need to fight like soldiers. When what time comes? Dr. Kang looked out at the stars again. The time when forgetting is no longer possible. When the things we stand guard against can no longer be ignored. That night, Vextai sent another encrypted report to his homeworld. Investigation reveals humans may be maintaining defenses against threats unknown to General Federation population. Local officials hint at past conflicts involving entities or phenomena beyond normal understanding. Recommend highest security classification for further reports. Whatever humans are prepared for, they believe it may return. He sealed the message and sent it into the void. Then he stood at his window and looked out at the same stars Dr. Kang had been watching. They looked different now, less peaceful, more like the eyes of watchers in the dark. Vextai's chance to dig deeper came when Captain Lee introduced him to Park Jin-ho, a veteran soldier who worked as a weapons specialist on the research station. Park was older than the others, with scars on his hands and a quiet way of moving that reminded Vextai of a predator at rest. Park served in the border wars, Captain Lee explained as they met in the station's small cafe. He has more combat experience than anyone else here. Park nodded politely to Vextai but said nothing. His eyes constantly scanned the room, checking exits and watching for threats that did not seem to exist. I would be honored to learn about your military service, Vextai said carefully. Park sipped his coffee and studied the Altrurian scientist. What do you want to know? I am trying to understand why humans maintain such extensive military forces. Your experience might help explain this cultural trait. Something flickered across Park's scarred face. Cultural trait. That is an interesting way to put it. Over the next hour, Park told Vextai about various conflicts he had served in. Battles against pirate fleets that raided human colonies, skirmishes with rival species over resource rights, peacekeeping missions on disputed worlds. But Vextai noticed that Park's stories had the same gaps as the historical records. Entire years where he claimed to have been on leave or in training, references to operations that he would not describe. You mentioned the border wars, Vextai said. Which borders were you defending? Park set down his coffee cup. The important ones. Could you be more specific? No. The simple answer hung in the air between them. Park was not being rude or evasive. He was being clear that this topic was forbidden. I am sorry if I asked about classified information, Vextai said. You did not know, Park replied. But there are things I cannot discuss. Things I sworn never to talk about. Not even for scientific research? Park leaned back in his chair and looked at Vextai with tired eyes. Doctor, let me tell you something about military service. Some operations are so classified that even the people who fought in them are not allowed to remember them officially. What do you mean? I mean there are medals I cannot wear, battles I cannot mention, enemies I cannot name. Park's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, because admitting they existed would cause panic across the entire galaxy. A chill ran down Vextai's spine. What kind of enemies? Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up from the table. The kind that make humans build walls around, everything we care about. Before Vextai could ask another question, Park walked away. That afternoon, Vextai found Park in the weapons maintenance bay, cleaning and checking the station's defensive systems. The human worked with the focused attention of someone who knew that lives depended on every weapon functioning perfectly. May I observe your work? Vextai asked. Park nodded without looking up from the energy rifle he was calibrating. Stay behind the safety line. Vextai watched as Park methodically checked each weapon system. The human's knowledge was impressive. He knew every specification, every weakness, every possible failure point. You treat these weapons like they are sacred objects, Vextai observed. They are, Park replied simply. These weapons stand between civilization and chaos. Surely that is an exaggeration. Park finally looked up from his work. Is it? Doctor, have you ever seen what happens when good people have no way to defend themselves? I cannot say that I have. My world has been peaceful for centuries. Lucky you. Park returned to his calibrations. Some of us have seen what peace costs. Someone has to pay that price. What price? Park was quiet for several minutes. Then he set down his tools and turned to face Vextai fully. Doctor, can I trust you to keep something confidential? Of course. I have fought in 17 major operations that do not officially exist. I have used weapons that are not supposed to be possible. I have seen enemies that would give your people nightmares for generations. Vextai felt his breathing quicken. What kind of enemies? The kind that exist in the spaces between space, the kind that feed on civilizations, the kind that your Federation, Council has worked very hard to make everyone forget. Park picked up another weapon and began checking its power cells. Humans remember because forgetting would mean extinction. We stay armed because being defenseless means death. We prepare for war because peace is just the quiet time between battles. But why do you not warn others? Why do you not share this threat with the Federation? Park laughed, but it was not a happy sound. And tell them what? That there are monsters in the dark that can unmake reality itself? That their peaceful worlds exist only because humans stand guard at the edges of known space? He gestured toward the window that looked out at the stars. Look out there, Doctor. Beautiful, is it not? Peaceful. Safe. Your people see that and they build art galleries and concert halls. We see the same stars and we build fortresses. Because you know something we do not. Because we remember something you were allowed to forget. That evening, Vextai tried to research the border wars that Park had mentioned. He found references to them in official Federation records, but the descriptions were vague. Minor conflicts, piracy suppression, resource disputes. But cross-referencing the dates with human military deployment records showed massive movements of warships and personnel, far more than would be needed for the minor conflicts described in the official records. He also found something else. Casualty reports that did not match the official stories. Humans had lost thousands of personnel during these minor conflicts. Ships had been destroyed or had simply vanished without explanation. Either the Federation records were wrong, or someone was deliberately hiding the true nature of these wars. The next day, Vextai approached Park again, this time in private. He found the veteran in his quarters during off-duty hours. Park, I have been thinking about our conversation yesterday. Park invited him in and offered him a seat. The humans' quarters were simple but organized like a military barracks. Everything had its place and purpose. What specifically were you thinking about? You mentioned enemies that exist in the spaces between space. What did you mean by that? Park was quiet for a long time. He stared out his small window at the stars. Doctor, do you know what dark matter is? Yes. It is the invisible matter that makes up most of the universe's mass. Right. We cannot see it directly, but we know it is there because of how it affects everything around it. Park turned to look at Vextai. There are things like that in the universe. Things that exist but cannot be seen. Things that affect reality but do not follow the rules of physics as we understand them. Are you talking about some kind of energy? Beings? I am talking about something worse than that. Park's voice became very quiet. I am talking about things that exist to destroy. Things that find civilizations like ours and consume them completely. Not just the people or the planets, everything, history, memory, the very possibility that we ever existed. Vextai felt a deep fear growing in his chest. That is not possible. Is it not? Doctor, how many ancient civilizations have you studied? Races that built great empires and then vanished without a trace? Well, several, but... And you assumed they destroyed themselves, or were conquered by rivals, or died from natural disasters. Yes. What else could have happened? Park stood up and walked to his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small device that looked like a data storage unit. This contains sensor readings from my last deployment. Readings that are classified at the highest levels. Readings that show what happened to the Corvani Empire. Vextai had studied the Corvani. They had been a peaceful species that built beautiful cities across 17 star systems. Then, 300 years ago, they had simply disappeared. All of them. Every trace of their civilization gone. The official report says they died from a plague, Vextai said. The official report is a lie. Park held up the data device. The Corvani were consumed by something that should not exist, something that ate their entire civilization from the inside out. What do you mean consumed? I mean they were erased. Not killed, erased. As if they had never existed at all. Except for some sensor readings and a few protected archives, there would be no evidence they had ever lived. Park put the device back in his drawer and locked it. That is what humans prepare for, Doctor. That is why we are so heavily armed, because we are the ones who remember. We are the ones who stand guard. We are the ones who fight the things that come to erase civilizations. But why you? Why do humans have this responsibility? Park sat back down and looked directly into Vextai's eyes. Because we survived our first encounter with them. Barely. And because someone has to do it. What was this first encounter? That is classified above my security level. But I can tell you this much. Earth almost did not survive. Our entire species came within hours of complete extinction. Not death. Extinction. As if humanity had never existed at all. Park leaned forward. That is when we learned that peace is not the natural state of the universe. That survival requires constant vigilance. That someone has to be willing to fight monsters so others can sleep peacefully. The breakthrough in Vextai's investigation came from an unexpected source. While reviewing the research station's personnel files, he discovered that one of the archivists was not human. Nalthus was an Etherian, a species known throughout the galaxy for their perfect memory and their role as keepers of historical records. Etherians lived for thousands of years and never forgot anything they had seen or heard. They served as living libraries for many civilizations. If anyone would know the true history behind human militarization, it would be an Etherian. Vextai found Nalthus in the deepest level of the research station, in archives that most personnel never visited. The Etherian was tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Her large eyes held the weight of centuries. Dr. Vextai, she said in a voice like whispered wind, I have been expecting you. You have? Word travels quickly in small places. You seek answers about human military practices. I may be able to provide some context. She led him through rows of data storage units that hummed quietly in the cool air. The archives contained more information than Vextai had ever seen in one place. I have been maintaining records for the Terran government for 200 years, Nalthus explained. I have seen files that most humans are not allowed to access. Will you share this information with me? Nalthus paused beside a secure door terminal. That depends on whether you are prepared for the consequences of knowledge. What do you mean? I mean that some truths, once learned, cannot be unlearned. Some knowledge carries a price that lasts forever. She activated the terminal and input a series of complex authorization codes. The screen flickered to life, displaying files that were marked with security classifications Vextai had never seen before. These are the real records, Nalthus said. Not the sanitized versions that the Federation Council reviews, not the edited histories that protect civilian populations from panic. These are the true accounts of what humans have faced. The first file she opened contained sensor readings from a human colony called New Geneva. According to the timestamp, the data was from 2387. Vextai recognized the date as one of the gaps in the official historical record. What am I looking at? He asked. The last transmission from New Geneva before it vanished. The sensor readings showed normal colony operations at first. Nearly 1 million humans living and working on a peaceful agricultural world. Then the readings began to change. Energy signatures that made no sense. Gravity fluctuations that defied physics. Finally, static. What happened to them? They were consumed, Nalthus said simply. Not destroyed. Consumed. Every trace of their existence was erased. She opened another file. This one showed a Federation survey mission that investigated the new Geneva system 6 months later. The planet was still there, but it was empty. Not abandoned. Empty, as if no one had ever lived there. The survey team found no buildings, no roads, no graves, no artifacts. Nothing to suggest that a colony had ever existed. But I remember the colony. I have perfect records of its establishment, its population, its communications with other worlds. Vextai felt a chill run through his body. That is impossible. Is it? Look at this. The next file showed similar events across multiple systems, colonies that simply vanished, research stations that stopped existing, entire fleets of ships that were erased from reality. This happened dozens of times over a period of 20 years, Nalthis explained. Each incident was classified and removed from public records. The Federation Council decided that knowledge of these events would cause galaxy-wide panic. But what was causing these disappearances? Nalthis opened a new file. This one contained data from human military sensors, recorded during something called Operation Silent Watch. The humans discovered that the disappearances were not random. They were attacks, deliberate consumption of civilizations by entities that exist outside normal space-time. The sensor data showed readings that hurt Vextai's mind to look at, energy signatures that folded back on themselves, matter readings that showed negative mass, spatial distortions that created geometry that should not be possible. The humans called them devourers, Nalthis continued, entities that feed on the existence of organized matter and energy. They consume entire civilizations and leave nothing behind but empty space. How is this possible? We do not know. Human scientists have theories, but the devourers operate according to principles that our physics cannot explain. What we do know is that they are drawn to large concentrations of intelligent life. Nalthis opened another file that showed a map of the galaxy. Red marks indicated systems where consumption events had occurred. Vextai was shocked to see how many there were. These are all the confirmed incidents? Only the ones we have records of. There may have been many more that were erased so completely that even I cannot remember them. She pointed to a cluster of red marks near the edge of known space. This is where the pattern became clear. The consumption events were not random, they were systematic. The devourers were working their way toward the core systems, toward Earth. What did the humans do? They fought back. Nalthis opened a file marked with the highest security classification. Operation Nightfall was humanity's response to the devourer threat. The file contained battle reports that made Vextai's blood run cold. Human fleets engaging enemies that could not be properly described. Weapons that operated on principles that violated known physics. Casualties that were measured not just in deaths, but in complete erasures from existence. How do you fight something that can erase you from reality? With weapons that exist outside reality, Nalthis replied. The humans developed technology that operates in dimensions parallel to our own. They created weapons that can wound things that do not technically exist. She showed him technical specifications for devices that hurt to look at, weapons that fired bullets made of crystallized time, energy projectors that shot beams of inverted space, shields that protected their users by existing in multiple realities simultaneously. This is beyond anything in Federation technology. Yes, because the Federation does not officially know about the Devourer threat. The human military developed these weapons in secret, with no outside help or oversight. The battle reports showed a war unlike anything in recorded history. Human fleets, engaging enemies that could appear anywhere and erase entire ships with a thought. Soldiers fighting creatures that existed in 11 dimensions at once. Victories that came at the cost of entire star systems being cut off from normal space-time. Did they win? Nalthis was quiet for a long moment. They achieved a stalemate. The last major incursion was stopped at the Battle of Kepler Station. The surviving Devourers retreated to the space between galaxies. Retreated? Not defeated. Retreated. They are still out there, in the dark spaces where light has never traveled. Waiting. She closed the files and turned to face Vextai directly. That is why humans are so heavily armed, Dr. Vextai. They are not preparing for conventional war. They are maintaining a watch against enemies that most species could not comprehend. But why do they hide this from the rest of the galaxy? Surely we all deserve to know about such threats? Do you? Would your people be happier knowing that their peaceful existence depends on human soldiers standing guard against cosmic horrors? Would they sleep better knowing that entities exist that could erase their entire species from reality? Vextai had no answer for that. The Federation Council made a decision. Nalthis continued. They decided that most species were not psychologically equipped to deal with the knowledge of the Devourer threat, so they classified all records and allowed people to believe that the universe is a safe place. And the humans agreed to this? The humans agreed to bear the burden alone, to maintain the weapons and the watch, to be ready for the day when the Devourers return. She led him to another section of the archives where older files were stored. These contained records from other civilizations that had faced the Devourers throughout galactic history. This is not the first time this has happened, she explained. The Devourers have attacked organized civilizations for millions of years. Usually, entire species are consumed before they understand what is happening. But some survived? A few. Always by developing weapons and tactics that operate outside normal reality. Always at enormous cost. And always by accepting the responsibility to stand guard for others. The ancient records showed civilizations that Vextai had never heard of, species that had achieved incredible technological advancement before encountering the Devourers. Most had been completely erased. A few had survived by becoming guardians like the humans. Where are these other guardian species now? Gone. Consumed in later attacks or worn down by the constant vigilance required. Humans are the last active guardian species in this galaxy. What happens if they fail? The response from the Altrurian Science Council came faster than Vextai expected. Instead of a message, they sent a ship. Instead of his usual contacts, they sent someone Vextai had never seen before. The visitor was another Altrurian, but one who wore the dark robes of the Deep Council, the secret organization that handled threats to galactic security. She introduced herself only as Consul Thikan. Dr. Vextai, your investigation has attracted attention at the highest levels of government, she said as they met in a secure conference room aboard the research station. Tell me what you have discovered. Vextai spent 3 hours explaining everything he had learned, the gaps in human history, the classified military operations, the hidden weapons, the archives that Nalthis had shown him, the evidence of entities called Devourers that consumed entire civilizations. Consul Thikan listened without interruption. When Vextai finished, she was quiet for a long time. Dr. Vextai, what I'm about to tell you is classified at levels that most governments do not know exist. You will be bound by security oaths that last until the end of your natural life. I understand. The Deep Council has known about the Devourer threat for over 400 years. We have been working with human leadership to maintain the secret and coordinate defense efforts. Vextai felt the room spin around him. The Federation knows. The Deep Council knows. The Federation Council does not. Most government officials throughout the galaxy have no idea what humans really defend against. She activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas where Devourer activity had been detected. Every major species has a Deep Council equivalent. Small groups of individuals who know the truth and work to protect their people from panic while supporting human defense efforts. How? Many people know? Perhaps 1,000 individuals across the entire galaxy. Military leaders, intelligence officials, senior researchers, all bound by oaths of secrecy. The map zoomed in to show human military positions throughout known space. Vextai was shocked to see the scope of their operations. Human defense networks extend far beyond their official territory, Consul Thikan explained. They maintain hidden bases in every major star system. Their patrols regularly sweep the dark spaces between galaxies. All in secret? All in secret. The official explanation for human military movements is always something mundane. Training exercises, anti-piracy, operations resource surveys. The civilian populations of all species believe that peace is the natural state of the universe. She showed him classified reports from other species' military forces. The Centauri maintained research stations that were actually weapons platforms designed to fight devourers. The Krillian Empire had mining operations that were really sensor networks watching for incursions. Everyone contributes to the defense effort. Everyone who knows contributes. The humans provide the primary military response, but they receive support from allies who understand the threat. Consul Tychon changed the display to show recent sensor readings from the edge of the galaxy. The energy signatures were unlike anything Vextai had seen before. These readings were recorded 6 months ago by a deep space monitoring station. The patterns match historical records of devourer movements. They are returning? We believe so. After 3 centuries of relative quiet, long-range sensors are detecting increased activity in the void spaces beyond our galaxy. She showed him more data, gravitational anomalies that suggested massive objects moving through empty space, energy readings that indicated the presence of entities that existed outside normal physics. How much time do we have? Unknown. Devourer movements do not follow predictable patterns. They could arrive next year or next century, but human military commanders are treating this as an immediate threat. The display changed to show human fleet movements over the past 6 months. Vextai was amazed at the scale of the mobilization. Entire fleets are being repositioned to defensive positions, Consul Thecon explained. New weapons are being deployed to forward bases. Reserve forces are being activated. What kind of new weapons? She showed him technical specifications that made his head hurt to look at. Devices that operated on principles he could not understand. Weapons that fired projectiles made of crystallized space-time. Energy systems that drew power from parallel dimensions. Human weapons technology has advanced significantly since the last major incursion. They believe they may be able to do more than just repel the next attack. What do you mean? They think they may be able to follow the devourers back to their origin point and end the threat permanently. The idea filled Vextai with both hope and terror. Is that possible? Human scientists believe it is. They have developed ships that can travel through the void spaces between realities. Weapons that can wound entities that exist outside normal space-time. She showed him images of the new vessels. They looked more like geometric puzzles than traditional spacecraft. Their shapes hurt to look at directly. These ships exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They can pursue enemies into spaces where normal matter cannot survive. What would happen if they succeeded? If they succeeded, the devourer threat would end forever. Civilizations across the galaxy could develop naturally without fear of cosmic predation. And if they failed? If they failed, humanity would be consumed along with everyone else. The galaxy would become a feeding ground for entities that exist, only to destroy organized matter and energy. Consul Thaikan turned off the display and looked directly at Vextai. Dr. Vextai, your investigation has been more thorough than expected. You have uncovered secrets that most intelligence agencies never discover. What happens now? Now you have a choice. You can return to your home world and continue your life as a civilian scientist. You will be bound by security oaths, but you can go back to studying peaceful subjects and forget what you have learned. Or you can join the Deep Council's research division. You can help coordinate scientific support for human defense efforts. You can contribute to the work that keeps our civilizations alive. The offer hung in the air between them. Vextai thought about his peaceful life on his homeworld, his research into alien cultures, his simple concerns about academic papers and scientific conferences. Then he thought about the humans he had met. Captain Lee with her constant vigilance, Dr. Kang with his carefully hidden knowledge, Park Jin-ho with his scars and his willingness to fight wars that did not officially exist. If I join, what would I be doing? Analyzing devourer technology and behavior, helping develop new defensive strategies, coordinating with scientists from other species who know the truth. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. Dr. Vextai, for centuries humans have carried this burden alone. They have sacrificed their peace of mind, their resources, their lives to protect species that do not even know they are being protected. And now the threat is growing. The next incursion may be larger than anything in recorded history. Humans cannot face it alone. Vextai joined her at the window. The stars looked different to him now than they had when he first arrived at the research station. They no longer looked like distant suns. They looked like outposts in an eternal war. What would my people think if they knew the truth? Some would panic. Some would demand immediate evacuation to other galaxies. Some would insist on building their own weapons. She turned to face him. But some would do what you are considering doing. They would volunteer to help. How many species have representatives in the Deep Council? 47 out of the 231 Federation member species. The others are judged to be psychologically unable to handle the knowledge. What makes humans different? Why can they handle it when others cannot? Consul Tycan was quiet for a moment. Humans evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill them. They developed cultures based on the assumption that survival requires constant struggle. When they learned about cosmic threats, it simply confirmed what they already believed about the universe. She activated a small data pad and showed him images from Earth's history. Humans fighting natural disasters, diseases, predators, each other. Most species developed civilization by learning to cooperate and reduce conflict. Humans developed civilization while remaining ready for war. When cosmic war came to them, they were psychologically prepared in ways that other species were not. And they chose to protect others? They chose to stand guard because someone has to. Because letting civilizations be consumed is unacceptable to them. That evening, Vextai walked through the research station one more time. He saw it differently now. It was not a fortress built by paranoid warriors. It was a watchtower built by people who had accepted responsibility for protecting others. He found Dr. Kang in the historical archives working late as usual. Dr. Kang, may I ask you something personal?